So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Ripp, and I'm the Assistant Director for the Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies program here at UW-Madison. I am delighted to introduce you to our first speaker for the afternoon session, Carlos Arenas. Carlos is currently working as a consultant with the Inter-American Development Bank on a project to assist the Guna indigenous community of Gardi Sugdub, which is located in Panama, to relocate to the mainland as a result of the lack of space and sea level rise. He has also worked with several nonprofits in the United States and Latin America, including the Rights and Resources Initiative, the Wisconsin Trust Account Foundation, and Working Capital for Community Needs. He is a UW-Madison Law School alumnus. Please join me in welcoming Carlos to our workshop. Thank you so much, Carlos.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all the organizers for inviting me to talk today. It is a pleasure for me to be here. So I have been asking myself, could the planned relocation experiences I have been involved with bring some tangible examples of success or climate optimism to this audience? So honestly, I don't know. Perhaps the only two things that I can offer to you today are my own optimism and to share with you what is remarkable to me in the planned relocation experience of the people from Gardisutu. In other words, what I have witnessed is a profound sense of agency that the Guna people have had to address very difficult circumstances and to face the specific challenges that they are dealing with. People generally are not passive victims, and most hate to be seen in that way, but many times they are agents of their own destiny. I hope that the fact that English is my second language will not be such a barrier to be able to share those ideas with you today. So please bear with me. So the outline of my presentation, I will start with a short video about this relocation that was made last year by Human Rights Watch. Then some background information about the history of the Gunayala region. Then I will move to different aspects of the planned relocation in general and the relocation of this community. And finally, I will touch bases on some potential impacts of relocation on the Guna people. So this presentation is in memory of my friend Blas Lopez, a community leader of Gardisuptup, who passed away on June 4, the day after the community moved to live in Isperjala.
Pueblo Cuna, en caso de Cartí, estamos hace más de 100 años que estamos en las costas de Cunayala. El conocimiento ancestral en tema de cambio climático puede aportar mucho ese conocimiento a través de su experiencia, de sus conocimientos, saberes ancestrales del pueblo Cuna.
Nosotros vamos a dejar la isla y tratar de movernos a tierra firme, ya que las circunstancias así lo ameritan. Nosotros lo hacemos por hacinamiento, ya que en la isla tenemos ya el censo es muy grande y muchas familias están viviendo hacinadas. Y por esa razón, esa fue nuestra prioridad para cruzar a la isla que está al frente, a la tierra firme. Casi el 50% de ese es el problema que tenemos en la isla, que es la falta de vivienda, la falta de dónde depositar nuestra basura y también tenemos el problema del agua. De verdad que el cambio climático se está acentuando cada año más.
El proyecto de la barriada es la iniciativa del pueblo de la comunidad de Cartí Suyo, ¿no? y es un proyecto ambicioso.
El presidente había comprometido que iba a entregar en septiembre, pero lo dudamos, ¿no? Un poquito, puede que... ¿En qué forma nos tienen que apoyar para hacer una mudanza de 300 familias? Eso era lo primero lo que estamos pensando en eso. ¿Cómo sería la mudanza? Cada uno con su canoa, con su botecito y la cantidad de gente. Algo increíble. Increíble. El gobierno debería de prestarle mucho más atención a eso.
Bueno, mi escuela no está en buenas condiciones porque cuando empieza a llover ocurren inundaciones en las calles. Entonces a veces dentro de los salones caen gotas y entonces como que queda un poco de charco adentro del salón. Entonces a veces nos mojamos. La ventaja mayor para nosotros sería trasladarnos allá en un lugar adecuado y tengamos una mejor calidad de educación allá.
Si por ahora a nivel del gobierno, que está mi ambiente, la institución rectora del medio ambiente, no tiene un plan, no tiene una política pública, un plan de reasentamiento. Espera, pues, que tantos más de 10, 15 años hemos esperado el proyecto.
En una primera instancia nosotros quisimos tener nuestra propia vivienda originaria de paja y nuestras paredes de bambú. Esa era nuestra idea. Pero el gobierno, sin consultarnos, ellos hicieron que nosotros nos hicieran esa clase de casas. Si nos hubiesen escuchado, hubieran hecho partícipe nuestros sentimientos, nuestras casas, nuestra comunidad Yisperiala fuese muy distinta, fuera parte de nuestra identidad.
Tampoco el Ministerio de Vivienda no tiene un plan frente a esos desafíos que una comunidad indígena si quiere trasladarse. O sea, falta un plan nacional sobre el cambio climático. Por ejemplo, esa iniciativa de la comunidad Cartí de trasladarse a una comunidad es un ejemplo y puede ser un modelo, pero claro, falta mucho la planificación y tanto del gobierno, tanto digamos de la misma comunidad.
Sí, ha sido una esperanza muy grande, casi 13 años de lucha, 13 años de trabajos. Muchas de las personas que empezaron limpiando el terreno, buscando el lugar ideal, han muerto, pero todavía quedamos. Y nuestros hijos, por eso es una alegría que nuestros hijos, nuestros nietos puedan verlo nuevamente. Y también es nuestra alegría ser los primeros, porque así otras comunidades que tienen que surgir, que irse a tierra firme, van a tener un modelo y van a poder mejorar la imagen que nosotros tenemos de Yisperiala, porque ahora sí van a poder luchar, van a poder exigir lo que desean.
So a little bit of background information. Here is the map of Panama, and the Gunayala region is in red in the map. So it's a long strip in the Caribbean coast of Panama that bordered with Colombia. the Guna people appeared in the colonial documentation starting in 1604. However, some degree of kinship between the Gunas and indigenous people that were living in the coast at the time of the arrival of the Spaniards can be assumed. Um, the, this was the area where the first city in the continental Americas was built, Santa Maria del Darién, in the year 1510. That settlement um, was destroyed by the indigenous people 15 years later. So the the Isthmus of Panama, during the first 20 years of colonization, most of the indigenous people um, um, pass away, were killed, or they have to move to the Choco area in the south of Darien. So the first group of Gunas that returned to live in the current Gunayala region did so in the year 1650, when the Scots arrived in the Guna territory to establish a colony in 1698. The entire northern coast of Panama was already inhabited by the Guna communities. Since then, the Guna people had lived and decisively defended the land. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the Guna interacted and many times partnered with pirates from England, France, and the Netherlands to fight against the Spaniards. Due to the permanent conflict with the Spanish authorities, the Guna communities were located at that time in the mountains. It was only at the beginning of the 19th century, after independence from Spain, did the settlements of the islands begin. This was a slow process that lasted several decades. And the reason for why the communities decided to move from the mainland to those tiny islands in the coast, it was because they were escaping from diseases, from mosquito-borne diseases and from snakes. In 1925, the Guna expelled, after several abuses by the Panamanian police, the Guna expelled the Panamanian authorities from the Gunayala region and declared autonomy. This uprising is called the Tule Revolution. Tule is another name for the Gunas. So the Tule Revolution is the most important historical event of the modern Guna people, which they celebrate with pride every year. And next year they will be commemorated the first 100 years of that event. The Guna semi-autonomous status was later reflected in various laws on the Gunayala region. Let's talk now about planned relocation. So there are different frameworks, approaches, and angles to this topic. The terms of planned relocation and resettlement typically are used interchangeable. But here I will be referring to planned relocation as part of the UNFCCC policy arena, where there are two main entry doors to this topic under adaptation. After COP16 in Cancun in 2010, the Cancun Adaptation Framework include this famous Article 14F about climate mobility, including displacement, voluntary migration, and planned relocation. And later in COP21 in Paris in 2015, under the topic of loss and damage, was created the task force on displacement. But we can talk, or there is some literature about planned relocations related as disaster risk reduction and prevention, and more generally regarding development projects. And under that topic, it is mostly referred as displacement and resettlement. And there is a very long history, at least 70 years of academic work on many authors highlighting about the damage that people typically suffer after those for displacement and resettlement as a result of construction of dams, highways, etc. So what is planned relocation? So it is a complex and long-term set of processes aimed to facilitate the moving of a community to a new and perhaps or hopefully to a safer location. So it is more than the physical building of a community, but the recreation of a new community. Some of the characteristics of a planned relocation is that it is collective as opposed to individual. It is coordinated or planned as opposed to improvise. It is intended to be permanent as opposed to temporary. It is done in anticipation or in response to climate-related hazards and vulnerabilities, such as like slow processes, such as sea level rise or reconstruction after disaster. Multi-causality is always present too. Generally, it should be a measure of last resort after adaptation options has been exhausted. Bauer and Weransinghe in 2022 identified more than 400 cases of planned relocation globally since the 1970s. Some regions are considered hotspots for planned relocations, such as the Pacific region. So planned relocations will likely continue to increase in the future. Almost all relocations will be within the borders of a country, and planned relocations will take different forms, shaped to the specific context of a given population, place, and time. What do we talk about relocation of communities in Gunayala? In Gunayala, there are 49 Guna communities. 38 of them are located on small islands near the mouth of rivers. And this pattern of settlement is important to understand because there is no fresh water in those islands. Cardisutub is one of those 49 communities. Population growth and the possibility of increased exposure to disaster risks due to rising sea levels are making Guna communities think that the time has come to relocate to the mainland. It is estimated that approximately 28,000 people in Gunayala will eventually have to relocate from the islands to the mainland. Cardisutub is a case of planned, preventive, voluntary, and community-led relocation. Here is an aerial picture of the island of Cardisutub. As you can see, is completely overcrowded. The main building that you see at the center and on your left is the school. So it's divided into different parts. And I love this picture because we can get a better idea of the island distance from the coast. There are two river mouths, and at the top you can see where the relocation site is located in the mainland, or Isberjala. And to the left of Isberjala, you can see the school complex that was built there too. So the predictions for sea level rise show that by 2050, 38% of houses in Cardisutub will be underwater. By the end of the century, 81% of the houses will be underwater. So things to consider during a planned relocation process. So before deciding to move, the main one, or the first one, is whether to move and who decides about moving and how. In the case of Cardisutub, as we saw in the video in 2010, the community collectively decided to move to the mainland and created a special committee assigned with that task. It was called the Neighborhood Committee, or Comité de la Barriada in Spanish. Originally, the community decided to ask the Panamanian government for support, but they were planning to move even if support was not offered. That determination of sense of agency was present from the very beginning. So after deciding to move, but before moving, this is a process that it typically takes at least 5 years. It took 14 years for the Cardisutub community to be able to do it. So where to move and who decides that? What kind of support is needed and offered? This issue of where to move is very important, and in some way, this case is simple in comparison to many other cases worldwide where is simple in the sense that the Gunas own the land in the mainland. So they have land where they can move. But in more other cases, the first thing is where to move. And people typically do not have a piece of land to move. Other things to consider: who decides about the design of the physical space of the new community, who decides about the designs of the houses prototypes, who decides about the definition of who is part of a community and its rights during a relocation process. And this is very important: what to do with the place where the community is located after moving to a new relocation site. In the case of Kadesuduk, the community decided to move to a parcel of land they own. It was located next to a school and health center the government was built at that time. Originally, in 2011, the Panamanian government offered to build 56 houses for the relocation. It was once the case became known internationally. In 2015, the government offered to build 300 houses. And here it's important to mention that it was the intervention of an international nonprofit called Displacement Solution, and I was working for that organization at that time that facilitate this, facilitate the fact that internationally this case was well known, so the government felt obligated in some way to support the relocation. So the Panamanian government decided the design of the physical space and the house prototype. And until the last minute, the government tried to decide who should be included as part of the community. Finally, they allowed the community to decide. So during this process, it was really hard for the community to imagine and decide what to do with the island. So a final decision is still pending. Things to consider at the time of moving. That actually this is the current stage in Gartisutu. The community start moving in January, at the beginning of June of this year, and is still in that process. So, but typically could take several weeks, months, or even years. So there are many things to consider, like when to move. Should the community move in only after all the houses have been completed, or do so on a staggered basis? Should the community move in only until all or minimal services are available? The symbolism of the space occupation is also very important, especially for indigenous communities. The issue of how to move, the logistics of the move, who is helping, who is paying for the move. In the case of Kadisuduk, the community decided to move collectively, as I said before, at the beginning of this month. So they decided to move collectively as a community once the new houses were completed and minimal services were available. The Saila or local chief, Jose Davis, decided to bless and inaugurate the gathering house, or Casa del Congreso, as they call it in Spanish, of Isberjara several weeks before the official inauguration by the Panamanian president. That created some tension with the Panamanian government. They wanted them to be the government being the first one that will inaugurate the place. But as Saila Jose Davis told me, it was important for them to show the government that they were the owners of the land. So for 3 days at the beginning of June of this year, the Panamanian government assisted with the logistics of the move from Gardisubdu to Isberjala. They provided volunteers, boats, and trucks. Around half of the community moved in that way. Other people have their own boats and were able to at least start that process. So here is a picture of the blessing ceremony of Isberjala Gathering House at the beginning of April. The community, it was important for the community to do this blessing, and they also took this as a rehearsal of the move. It was the first time that they were asking the community to mobilize to the mainland collectively for an activity, for an event. So, and they didn't know if people were interested or not. They were not sure if more than 5 people will show up. More than 200 people attended the event. So, and I heard many stories that after um, being there, people didn't want to go back to their island. So this is a picture of moving day at Gardisubdu. So the families were only allowed that day to move very few things with the assistance from the government. Um, and you can see why. So those were the kind of boats that were used. And you can see some police members and other volunteers that helped that day. So they moved the belongings of the people from the island to the port, the Nica Cantule port, and from there on trucks to Isberjala. So other things to consider after moving. So that's a process that could take several years. So are there social programs offered to support and facilitate the transition to the new relocation site? Are there economic programs offered to rebuild the local economy in the new relocation site? What kind of expenses will people have at the new site? And what are the new things that need to be managed or administered in the new site? At this moment, the Panamanian government, unfortunately, doesn't have social or economic programs to support the Isberjala community during the transition. And people in Isberjala will have to pay energy bills to a private utility company. People will have to pay a monthly fee to the community for the new water and sanitation system. And they also have to create committees to administer and maintain those facilities. This is another picture of the inauguration day of the new relocation site, Isberjala. So quickly, potential impacts of the relocation. The potential cultural losses. Relocation to the mainland will present the Gunas with social, economic, political, and cultural challenges in the form of losses that are inherent and inevitable in any relocation resettlement project. My colleague, Anthony Oliver Smith, who is an anthropologist from University of Florida, and I project a certain array of problems that the Guna will face in the resettlement process. The loss of place, the loss of home, and the loss of path. Those all might be triggered by the totality of losses that they are experiencing. And all form of losses will fall into what can be the most devastating of all, the loss of meaning. And this is especially true for the elderly. The loss of home, the concern, resettlement produce deep pain among people due to the loss of home understood as the built environment and community. The new community of Isberjala will mean an almost total reorientation toward the urban space. The project will relocate a community of 1,500 people currently living in extremely overcrowded conditions to an area that is like 22 hectares in a very dispersed spatial distribution. The resources the Guna have to respond. The Vicuna community has taken a very pragmatic approach to the design of the houses. And they are the first to recognize that the design is culturally inappropriate, as we heard in the video. But at the same time, they value what has been built for them. Their strategy focused on obtaining a lot large enough to expand their houses according to the needs and opportunities of each family. The loss of place. Resettlement processes cause anguish to the people who have to experience it due to the fear generated by the loss of a known place. The relocation of Gardisuduk will distance its inhabitants from the sea, which they refer to as their grandmother. The new community, approximately 1 kilometers from the coast, will not allow them to see the ocean. Some of the resources that the Guna have to respond. The Gunas has always maintained a close relationship with the mainland. So the mainland, the place where they are relocated, are close to their farms. It's the place where they typically use to cultivate their crops. So some of the Silas um, mentioned to me that this sentence of it is a place to work. That it is a place to work. We always go there to work. So in this way, a sense of continuity with the past can be established on the continent and will provide them with cultural elements for cultural adaptation to the new community. The loss of past. Nostalgia is defined as the pain for a lost past. We wonder if nostalgia will be present in an indigenous culture that still vibrates and proudly celebrates a victorious past and a no less successful present. Will the loss of past be inevitable in the relocation of Kardisubdu? If so, what and how much of the past will be lost? Perhaps the answer to these questions depend on ensuring that there is a continuity of key traditions. The responses of the Guna, clearly history is very important for maintaining the cultural identity of the Guna people. Ethnographers have highlighted that the Guna chiefs or silas govern by consensus. This is why the gathering house is so central to their culture. Another important building in the Guna culture is what is called La Casa de la Chicha or Chicha House. It's the site of many community solidarity celebrations involving food and dancing. The Guna language is also central to their culture, as all songs and traditions only exist in their own language. So, as a conclusion, I can say that the Guna people have a robust sense of identity. Their language, the Dulegaya, continues to be viral and actively used across generations. Historically, the Guna people have demonstrated enough flexibility so far to adapt without sacrificing their sociocultural integrity. The Gunas of Kardisubdub, Isberjala, seems prepared to adapt once again and keep protecting the core aspect of their culture, now from the mainland. Thank you. I have only some few additional pictures to show. This is the day of the inauguration. The person with the face mask is President Cortizo of Panama. This is another picture from inauguration day. People walking the new neighborhood, the same with this picture. It was a very hot day. So people were looking for places to stay. This is a model, was the model house that the government prepared and organized. This is what you can see in a traditional house in Gardisub. People live in hammocks and they maintain all their things very well organized and those overcrowded conditions. Again, this is the model house that the Panamanian government said to show how the house could be used. There is not possible to hang hammocks, so people will have to use mattress. This is a sport facility that was also built. And some pictures in the region. The main economic activity in the area is tourism. They have very beautiful small islands, as the one that is on the left. And on the right, sometimes crews from the US visit them. So that I think that I can stop here for questions or comments. Thank you.
Carlos, thank you so much. That was really interesting. Before I even sort of give my closing remarks, I just wanted to extend my thoughts for the loss of your friend Blas that you dedicated your presentation to. Obviously, he just passed away really only a few weeks ago, so I'm sorry to hear about that. So thank you for sharing this presentation about the Gunas people's struggle to retain their autonomy in the face of climate change and its effects on their homeland. At this time, I invite everyone to share any questions they may have for Carlos. Please utilize the chat box, and we have about 10 minutes for questions. I have a couple of questions which I'll pop in the chat too, Carlos. I know sometimes it's easier to answer them when you can see them as well as hear them. You addressed this a bit already in your presentation, as when you mentioned that the Guna people have had a long-standing relationship with people on the mainland. But I am wondering now that they're actually living there and there'll be more living there versus it sounds like maybe coming and going for work purposes. Are they being well received or is there pushback? I guess that's my first question.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Very important question. Um, this case is very unique in the sense that there is not what in the literature is known as the host community, the community that live in the place where a community relocates. No, no one was living there. So they are the first one that are moving to live in. However, there is another island community that is close by the community of Aquatupo, and they also share sort of farms in the area. And some have been some clashes, misunderstandings, um, also, the use of rivers and creeks in the area are also divided by communities. Um, and it has been a little bit of conflict about that, um, conflict about the way as historically the Gunas own land. This is communal land. So um, there is no private property per se, but people can claim a piece of, typically a family can claim a piece of land, and they typically mark that land by planting trees. So they identify that, and there is a person in the community that is in charge of kind of honoring that system and kind of remember or keep track, some kind of keep track of that ownership. Obviously, it's complicated. What we have learned is that many times limits were not entirely clear. So the community thought that they the all the land for the project was their own, but there were small pieces of land that people from other communities claim, so they have to pay them for those pieces of land.
Thank you. The second question I had, and please, anyone else who has questions, please jump in. I wondered what the Panamanian government is doing to mitigate rising sea levels as the situation with the Guna people, it's not going to end with them. It's just obviously the tip of the iceberg, and I'm sure um, a good example of what we're going to continue to see around the world. So I wondered if they are doing anything innovative um, to help with that.
Um, no, this has been well, a little bit of background. So as I mentioned before, in 2014, I was working for this international nonprofit displacement solution, and we traveled there to document the situation and the organization of this community uh, for this relocation project. So after that, um, we produced a report that brought a lot of national and international attention to this relocation, and the government eventually became involved and offered to build it 300 houses. So we also highlighted at that point that the importance of this case as a learning experience. It was let's support this community. No one knows how to do it. We want to learn. The community want to do it, want to learn. Obviously, the Panamanian government wants should use this opportunity to learn as well. Um, so, like every different actor that has been involved um, has been attracted, has possibility of learning in this process because those relocation processes are very new. This is one of the few, most of the cases that we know are from Fiji, as perhaps the country that has advanced the most in terms of frameworks and policies about how to do relocations. But most of the relocations that I have seen there are smaller communities than Gardisubtup one. So it had definitely been a learning experience all this time.
Thank you, Carlos. Andrea just posted another question related to this subject. She says, thank you so much for this presentation. One of the women in the video stated that there's joy to be found in being one of the first communities relocated, so they can serve as a model or basis for improvements for other Indigenous communities. Are you able to speak on other relocation efforts that may already benefit from the process you presented today?
Yeah, so the community also has taken a lot of pride of being the first community doing this. And again, it is far from being a model. Has been a learning experience for everyone. There are positive aspects, but I will have to say the overall the outcome is in general positive in the sense that the the Panamanian government has made a big investment here. I have calculated that around $47 million has been invested for all the things that, including the school complex, the regional school complex, the community of East Berjala, a health center that was intended to be built, and the electrification of the entire area. So it's something that um, the Panamanian government cannot do in other relocation processes, pay this amount. In fact, the Ministry of Environment in Panama has identified at least, if I remember correctly, 63 other potential communities that are around Panama, some of them in Gunayala, that might have to be relocated. So the price tag of that will be $1 billion. Obviously, impossible for the Panamanian government to pay. So there are many things need to be done differently. Future relocations probably or definitely will have to be more culturally sensitive, build with materials that from the region instead of importing everything from Panama City. Involve the community instead of hiring a construction company. So it's the own community in a kind of self-construction process using local materials. So that will decrease the price tag. No, every community will have to build a school. That was the most expensive part of this relocation process. They built an exceptionally big school for the Panamanian standards. It's a beautiful school, and apologize I didn't include many pictures of the school in my presentation. But so that is one thing that other communities will not have to do. And going back to the model, so the community has also learned in the process. The Inter-American Development Bank have assisted with the community with technical assistance, with all different kind of studies, so that feed the community leaders with information, with knowledge to be able to negotiate with the government, and the members of the community involved in this process are real experts in relocation now. So definitely for future relocations, obviously in Cunayala, they are the experts. They should be consulted. They should be part of that. But also in other parts of Panama and Latin America and internationally, they are now experts. They have gone through this process. Blas Lopez was one of them, but it was not the only one. He was perhaps the person with um, the most charismatic leader, but he was not the only one, fortunately.
So, Carlos, it sounds like this is uh, sort of a case study that lots of hands and lots of countries are probably watching to see the outcomes and how they can integrate some of these things. And also, I think something I took away from this too was something that is a common theme, I think, across the world is that there's so much of this top-down approach and often decisions being made for people without their input or trying to determine what is going to work for them the best. So you have a few other questions and comments. Sarah Kunizny, excuse me, says that this is such a complex answer and so many factors to consider for future moves. She also says, thank you for sharing this incredible story. You've opened my thinking about relocation to another level. Sarah Lomez Flesh has said, thank you so much for sharing this important story, Carlos. I've learned so much. Do the Guna children go to school with mainland children, and were there preparations, excuse me, by educators to help welcome and integrate them?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So actually, in this case, there were two relocations: the relocation of the community and the relocation of the school. Again, the school was located in the island, and new school was built in the mainland. And there were several problems at several levels. And one of them was that the coordination, like the school, the construction of the school started around 2012, and it was done only last year when the community was, when Miss Vergara was not ready. So the Ministry of Education, it took all that time because the different problems with the construction company, and many delays, etc. So the Ministry of Education transferred the administration of the new school to um, the school community, so to the parents, to the teachers, to the director, but they were not able to use the school at that point because it didn't have water. So they have to add another project to build an aqueduct for the school. So they are finishing these last few days that aqueduct. So the school is finally ready, will be ready, will start classes on July 15. So there were many discussions over the last few years about what to do. Okay, so should we transfer the kids? This is a regional school, so not only the kids of Cardisupu, but other islands, communities from the area go there. So it's the logistics of the daily move of kids from islands to the mainland was not only complicated, expensive, but um, it also had many risks, and especially for the little ones. So parents decided, no, there's no way that we will allow our little kids, um, the kids in elementary school, to do this back and forth. So they decided only until the community is relocated, we will start using this school. But again, there were the problem with the water. So the one of the big heroes here actually has been the school director. I have been so impressed with him as a community leader. He was a hero during the pandemic. He was actually he received several national recognitions for his work during the pandemic. So he took um, lessons to each kid in each island, took and distribute the food that was shared for the people in the area. He organized all the logistics of that, and so um, like if you can think of ways to connect your own schools with a project that is worth to, I will be more than happy to connect you with that this school. There are many um, potential things that could be done that could be done there.
Thank
Sorry, my
you.
response was perhaps too long.
No, you're fine. Carlos, thank you again. I want to close with this comment from one of the individuals here watching your presentation. Jerry says, thank you for this powerful and timely presentation. It helps to feel their experience, even on some level, and builds empathy. And I hope that just really this whole workshop today, that's, I think, for all of us, a large part of our motivation. So you obviously hit the nail on the head today.